Hello, how are you? I'm Ted, this is Eric. I've gotten to know Eric very well through my involvement with Groupon. I'm on the board of directors of Groupon, and I've fallen in love with Eric. And I've also fallen in love with Chicago. My wife is from Chicago. Michael Jordan worked for me and played for my team, and I love everything that Groupon is doing. And I've always wanted to ask Eric this question because he is a true entrepreneur's entrepreneur. Is the drive to win, or do you just hate losing?
It's a great question. I mean, I think, and I had a chance to talk a little bit to Ted about it before. And I think it's interesting because my first inclination when the question came up was, well, you have to want to win. But in talking it through, I realized that it's more important to want to not lose. And I can see that. I think people who are motivated to build great companies or try and do something new have this constant paranoia and fear of failure and this constant drive not to let it overtake them. So, I would say, having had the chance to cheat and have Ted give me the right answer, that it's you have to not want to lose.
So when someone here comes to you with an idea or a business plan, is it good that they've had failures beforehand?
I think for me at least, and this doesn't, it's more personal for me. I mean, you hope as somebody who's starting a business or launching something new that they never have a failure, and that they just have kind of an easy, smooth path to success. But we've done well over time, building off of the foundation of failure, really figuring, for us, I think for Brad and I, our journey is one where we didn't innately understand business. We had to kind of mess everything up every different way possible and learn through that experience. Almost like, if we didn't do it, no one could just tell us. It wasn't like, hey, avoid this pitfall. We actually had to make the mistake. And so I talk a lot about it, and I tell people all the time that I think, at least when I look at entrepreneurs today and we look to make investments, one of the greatest things we look for or see is when they've experienced some hardship, some adversity, some failure along the way. Because I think you build on it, you learn from it, it makes you stronger, and ultimately it makes you wiser as an entrepreneur. So I think it's critical.
Only 3 acts in the American drama. Young kid comes out of nowhere, defies the odds, slays the dragon, wins big. Act 1. Act 2, very public fall and failure. Media bloggers love that. Act 3, comeback. And America loves a comeback. Earlier today we were talking about Steve Jobs, rest in peace. And I met Steve in 1979 at a West Coast computer fair. I worked for a hot company at the time, no longer in business, called Wang Laboratories. And I bought my first Apple II. And then I started my first company in 1981, and because I knew Steve a little bit, got to work with them and worked on the rollout of the Macintosh computer. And saw Steve through some great times, and saw him fail. People forget there was the Lisa. It was his first iteration of a mobile device, total failure. He failed so badly they kicked him out of the company. And he had the greatest second act of all time. And one of the things that I can say that we've all learned from Steve is that relentless, maniacal focus on quality and customers is the ultimate definer. He worried about Main Street, not Wall Street. He worried about what did customers and how did they fall in love and become dazzled with what he created. And from a personal behavior standpoint, he exhibited a lot of traits that I see from the best entrepreneurs. They really understand the big picture narrative, the romance around what they're doing. And then they focus on every little detail. I made a print property for Steve back in 1983, and he summoned me to his office, and he literally had a jeweler's, magnifying glass, and he was asking me questions about clay content and thread count in the paper, and the Apple logo is 7 colors with a spot varnish. And he knew every single detail and he obsessed about it, but he never lost sight of that big picture and what the strategy and vision and the narrative was. And he would let his employees worry about the middle. And I think that that's an unbelievable lesson, and certainly one that I've tried to employ in my business affairs and also in the investments that I make.
So now that we're totally, we had written down 6 questions, so we're completely off, which is where we should be, given that we both have ADD and have a hard time focusing. So, I actually, what's interesting is that look, Steve Jobs has occupied, I think, most people's minds for the past week, and it's been really interesting. I think for people who run their own business, who are entrepreneurial or who are trying to innovate, because all of a sudden he's come to crystallize so much that we all aspire to, or so much that we think is noble or good in what you try to do when you're disrupting something. And obviously that's gone far beyond just people in business. It's now kind of almost a national theme. But what I was most taken aback by in all the interviews that came out that night about him and his life is that he made this little tiny comment in the middle of a zillion really world famous quotes. And one of them was something like, someone said to him, why did you start Apple? And he said, well, I started Apple because in Silicon Valley, the cost of failure was next to nothing. It was just so easy to start a company. And I think in the theme of Chicago Ideas Week, and one of the themes that we spend a lot of time talking about here is that a lot of times I feel like the cost of failure is so high, because in Chicago, we too often have this mentality of beating up people who fail. And I think often in the Valley, they have the exact opposite mentality of really honoring people who take chances and take risk and fail. And so I worry about that. If there's one thing that I worry about more than any in the heartland, the Midwest, this hard-working kind of ethic, it's that can we, really honor the risk taker and not pounce on them when the risk they took didn't pan out.
Steve Jobs also said that taking LSD was one of the 3 greatest learning experiences of his life and career. So I don't know if I'd follow everything that he said. When I worked on the Mac team, and frankly, Apple Computer didn't believe in the Mac. They had it as a side business. It was in a crappy little building, and he used to call his developers the pirates, and he wasn't afraid to fail. In fact, he hated to lose, and so he was going to make the Macintosh, and it's kind of this populist movement. I would say that the Mac really was a forebearer to AOL, and then frankly now to Facebook, this socialization, this popularization of taking really, really hard, ugly things and trying to make it palatable and usable for everybody. And Steve certainly was the king of that. And I think it also points to the importance and the value that's created by founder-led companies. You'll find sometimes when I get involved with companies, it'll be, well, this is the founder, and we need grown-ups around. We need gray hair to lead and manage the company. And I've just looked at the best days of AOL was when we were founder-led. We had an intrinsic feel for the customer and the business model. Google is founder-led. Apple had an unbelievably strong hand. Groupon is founder-led. And so I think we should be celebrating founders and building teams around them, because ultimately, Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook is proving this as well, that founder-led companies build all the value.
So let me, it's a great, now we'll just to segue a bit. So you and I just have this. This is like maybe my one question that I really want to get out is you've had this inside view of watching three really interesting, fast-growing companies get built. You were obviously there for AOL getting built and were building it with your own two hands. You were there when Google was built. You had an early seat at that table. And then obviously had an early seat with Groupon being built. I mean, especially as you think about today's day and age and how fast things are changing, the effect of, the social landscape, the effect of mobile, the effect of global. I mean, is there something similar in those three companies? Are they totally different? Is it that founder DNA that you think has let them all be successful?
Yeah, I'd say the common thread in all of it is Kara Swisher. Just kidding. I would say that all three companies really started with the product stupid. They didn't really worry about business model. They worried about making really, really great products that were for mass consumption and trying to take what looks hard and complicated and make it easy. And all three companies really came with a first leading, I don't want to say killer app, but something that was just so good, so unique to start. And then they identified adjacent opportunities. When I first, AOL made one of the first investments in Google and we let them create our search, I was told, we're just going to be an arms dealer. We're just going to provide you with the algorithm. And I said, well, I don't believe you because the adjacent opportunities to go into mail and messaging and mapping, I had bought MapQuest. I saw the other day that Google Earth just was downloaded for a billionth time. And that once you get that first bionic arm really pumping, it gives you permission to just bolt things on in these great adjacent opportunities. We're seeing that with Groupon right now, with the travel products and the Groupon products rollout. And so I think that it's the real focus on that one great thing. And if you get that right, then you have permission to grow.
Yeah, it's interesting, I think. What we see a lot, I spend time now at Lightbank as well, where I get to kind of wear these two hats. I get this really interesting view by being next to Andrew Mason as he's building, Groupon, and that occupies most of my time. But then I also get this really interesting seat at Lightbank watching these. We now have 30 really small to mid-sized technology companies that are all trying to find their model. And what I'm most interested in, I think, among that group is how they pivot their business models and how they essentially test and try and claw their way into one area of success and then adapt when it doesn't work. And what I worry about, and you've obviously seen the world from both perspectives, but what I worry about with the larger companies is that you lose that sense of being able to pivot. That inertia you talk about that propels the business forward also can become a handicap when you think about doing something different, because you never want to, kind of turn off that oil well or pivot too far from what's made you successful.
Well, you wrote that book. You wrote Accelerated Disruption, and each of these companies is becoming a major player, and they're going to have to eat their flesh. We know there's some young person somewhere who's creating something that will try to disrupt every one of your companies. What is it that you look at? I mean, all these people are here really for you, and Brad, and what is it that you're looking for now in terms of making an investment, embracing an entrepreneur, and helping them to get to scale?
Well, you're going to see one of them, Bo's here from Zarly, so you get a chance to see one of them live. But I think we look for really two things, and there's no science to it. We look for the same things you look for. You run a fund much larger than ours. We look for great business models and great entrepreneurs, and really I think a great business model is something that intuitively connects to you. You just kind of say, oh my God, that's awesome, or I never thought about that, or that could be huge, or why doesn't that exist, or why doesn't everybody use that? And a great entrepreneur is really, I think, somebody who has incredible passion behind what they're doing. They draw you in. You're kind of magnetically connected to their idea, and you also get this sense that I think to the question you raised at the very beginning, that they will not lose. They just will do everything in their power to avoid failure. It's their life, and so that's what we look for. How about you? What do you?
I bet jockeys more than the horse. I really think that there's lots of ideas, but it's the people and the teams that differentiate, and do they have the stick-with-itness, and have they had failures before, and are they able to focus on what the higher calling is? I think what Brad did here with Ideas Week is really brilliant for Chicago. There's this big belief that we have in the rise of the rest. We know the next Bill Gates is somewhere in some high school in India right now, and he has access to the world from some high-speed connection that wasn't available 20 years ago. And so we've been so California, Silicon Valley based for innovation and as an economy. And I'm seeing now Chicago, Washington, D.C., Boston starting to get its act together again, Carolina, some of the great games companies. We all know about Zynga, but there's fantastic games companies in Bethesda, Maryland, and in North Carolina. And if you have great technology and a great keiretsu of venture capitalist, Peter Barris is here. Peter lives in Washington, D.C., where NEA is headquartered, but he's probably the largest investor in Chicago startups, along with Eric and Brad. And so it's good for the country. I mean, what we need most right now as a nation is job creation, innovation, and an export of excellence. We're talking about Steve Jobs. There's a lot of people around the world that don't like America. There's no one around the world that doesn't love Apple. And that should be kind of the beacon for us as innovators and investors and entrepreneurs to make products that start here, but there's 2.2 billion people around the world connected to the internet. It's like 10% of them in the United States. So, the hype right now is local and mobile and social, and yeah, I agree. But really, it's a big world, and the companies that are building value have made products that export. All of Google's traffic, all of Facebook's traffic, Amazon is very, very aggressive outside the United States. Groupon is a phenomenon outside of the United States. And so I encourage people to, think locally, but make products that will sell globally.
And let me just, one last kind of question for you, because I'm interested in your perspective. I mean, you also straddle the world of sports and the world of technology. I mean, is managing and building a sports franchise any different than building a technology startup? I mean, is it similar disciplines, similar attributes, similar challenges?
Yes and no. I mean, it is. We have subscribers and we sell sponsorships, and we have a big audience that we have to reach, and more of it is through social means. We're very, very digital, and television is becoming more social and the like. But the difference truly is in business, you can have multiple winners. You can argue, well, Groupon will win, but will Google and their effort build value? Will Living Social do well? In sports, there's each year one winner and 29 losers. And so that's the joy and also the pain of being in sports. And I think while it's great, I enjoy my work in the business frontier better than owning the sports teams.
Well, our time is up, I think, given that little clock is now going the other direction. We have one more? Yeah, I mean, so I'll say, maybe I'll close with this. I think it's been remarkable. When you talk about kind of the global trends that we're seeing today, to me, one of the most remarkable parts about Groupon is how united the world has become and how similar the world has become. I mean, when we took Groupon outside the United States and did a deal with the first clone that we came in contact with and started selling Groupons in the UK or in France or in Italy, I thought, oh, well, that makes a ton of sense. But as they now have migrated their way into maybe, 45 countries or how many we're in, it's just daunting to me that people in Korea and South Africa and, all different parts of the world are reacting to Groupon the very same way they are in Minneapolis and Detroit and Chicago and New York. And so it's truly become a one world connected by some really innovative technology. So I think for the people here today that are trying to build those companies, it's just an awesome time.
And this school, unbelievable reputation around the country. Some of the seminal work that started on the internet. Not enough people give credit to the Tribune Company. The Tribune Company were really the first publisher to embrace digital, and to be honest, they were the first investor, the first company that believed in us at AOL. And I think that there's unbelievable opportunities to start companies here, get them financed, get them incubated and grow and build lots of value, create a lot of jobs, and do the right thing the right way. Thank you, and we all look forward to the next speakers.